That morning started out like any other, quiet, familiar, almost comforting. I had just poured myself a cup of coffee when the phone rang. I picked it up, expecting maybe my sister or a neighbor. Instead, a cheerful voice greeted me as though we'd spoken before. "Good morning, Bianca. Your earrings are ready for pickup." For a second, I thought I misheard. Bianca? Earrings? I frowned, setting my mug down on the counter. Without thinking, I jumped in. "Excuse me, I'm not Bianca. My name is Emily." "You must have the wrong number." I tried to keep my tone polite, but a strange unease crawled up my chest. On the other end, I heard papers being shuffled, the hesitation in his voice growing thicker by the second. I looked out the kitchen window, the sunlight spilling across the sink, willing myself to stay calm. Then came the words that made my stomach drop. "Oh, strange. Kevin Palmer left this number when he placed the order." Kevin Palmer. My husband. In that instant, my whole body locked up, like time itself had stopped. My coffee suddenly felt sour on my tongue. This wasn't a mistake. It was a crack tearing through the life I thought I knew. I stood there in the kitchen, clutching the phone like it had just burned me. My heart raced, pounding in my ears so loud I could barely hear myself breathe. Kevin had always been steady, predictable, the kind of man who double-checked the locks at night and never forgot to water the plants. And yet here was his name, tied to someone else's earrings, tied to someone else's life. I wanted to brush it off, to laugh and tell myself it was some silly mix-up. Jewelry stores make mistakes, right? Maybe another Kevin Palmer existed. Maybe his number was close to mine. But deep down, something twisted in my gut refused to let go. That little voice, the one we all try to silence, whispered, "This isn't a coincidence, Emily." I hung up, but my hands were shaking. I stared at the phone, half expecting it to ring again, as if the universe wanted to double down on this cruel little joke. My coffee had gone cold on the counter, untouched, forgotten. The morning light no longer felt warm. It felt like a spotlight, exposing cracks I hadn't even noticed before. I knew life was about to change, though I couldn't yet see how far the fracture would spread. When Kevin walked into the kitchen later that morning, humming like nothing had shifted, I watched him differently. Every movement, grabbing his keys, checking his watch, kissing my cheek, felt rehearsed, almost staged. I smiled back, but inside my mind was spinning, replaying that phone call word for word. Bianca, earrings, Kevin Palmer. It echoed like a cruel mantra I couldn't silence. I tried to study his face, looking for a flicker of guilt, some crack in his calm exterior. But he was good, too good. His casual chatter about meetings and deadlines felt like smoke, thick and suffocating, blinding me from the truth I was only beginning to piece together. I nodded, I listened, but I was no longer the same woman I'd been an hour before. Something had shifted, something permanent. As he left the house, the door clicking shut behind him, I stood frozen in place. I should have gone about my day, laundry, errands, the endless little tasks that keep life moving, but I couldn't. My heart thudded in my chest, heavy and restless. That single name, Bianca, had planted itself deep inside me, and I knew I wouldn't be able to pull it out without bleeding. And that's where it all began. At first, I told myself it had to be a mistake. Jewelry stores mess up orders all the time, don't they? Maybe the clerk wrote the wrong name. Maybe Kevin was planning something sweet and just got details mixed up. I clung to those excuses like life preservers, trying to keep myself from drowning in doubt. But the harder I held on, the more slippery they felt. Deep down, something stubborn refused to let me rest. That unease from the phone call never left. It clung to me through breakfast, through folding laundry, even through the simple act of making the bed. My thoughts were loud, relentless. Why would he use my number? Why the name Bianca? They were questions with no safe answers, and silence only made them louder. So I started paying attention. Quietly, carefully, the way someone studies a puzzle piece by piece. I noticed the way he lingered at the door a little longer before leaving. I watched his face when his phone buzzed, the way he turned slightly away. These weren't dramatic signs, just small cracks. But once you see one, you start noticing them everywhere. I began keeping track of the little things. His work hours suddenly stretched later than usual, yet his energy when he came home wasn't exhaustion. It was something else, almost a glow. I checked receipts he left lying around, small slips of paper that told stories he never voiced. Gas stations on the other side of town, restaurants I'd never heard of. Each one felt like another stone stacked on my chest. I told myself I wasn't spying, just noticing. But it felt like I was living in two worlds, the one he performed for me at home, and the one he thought I couldn't see. And in the shadows of that second world, a name hovered, always the same. Bianca. She wasn't just a random name anymore. I remembered her face from a photo in his office, a coworker with a bright smile and sharp eyes. The thought of her tightened my throat. Had I missed something all along? Were there clues in the way he talked about work, the subtle pauses when her name slipped into conversation? I combed back through memories like old files, searching for signs I'd dismissed at the time. The more I replayed them, the more a sickening truth began to form. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern. Nights became the hardest. I'd lie awake beside him, listening to his steady breathing, wondering if the calm in his chest hid the storm brewing in mine. I wanted to reach over, to shake him awake and demand the truth, but fear held me back. What if he denied it? Worse, what if he didn't? That uncertainty wrapped around me tighter than any blanket ever could. During the day, I carried myself as if nothing had changed. I smiled when neighbors waved, chatted with friends on the phone, went through the motions of normal life. But inside, I was unraveling. Every detail, his sudden cologne, the way he checked his phone at dinner, his vague excuses, fed the suspicion that was growing roots deeper and deeper into my soul. And yet, despite the ache, despite the gnawing fear, a quiet determination began to rise in me. If Kevin was hiding something, I needed to know. No more excuses, no more blind faith. The truth was out there, woven into his habits and his lies, and I was ready to follow the threads wherever they led. One afternoon, I decided I couldn't just sit in the dark anymore. I grabbed my coat, slipped out of the house, and followed Kevin into the city. My heart pounded with every step, a mix of adrenaline and dread fueling me forward. I told myself I just needed clarity, one clear sign to either silence my doubts or confirm the storm inside me. What I found was far more than I ever wanted to see. From across the street, I spotted him. Kevin wasn't alone. There she was, Bianca. Her arm looped through his like it belonged there, their laughter spilling into the air like music only they could hear. They walked closely, too closely, the kind of closeness reserved for lovers, not coworkers. My chest tightened as I watched him lean into her, his smile wider, freer than any I'd seen in months. In that moment, the world shrank around me. The noise of the city faded, the rush of traffic dulled, even the chill of the wind disappeared. It was just me, standing there, watching the life I thought I had dissolve in front of my eyes. My heart ached, but strangely my spine straightened. The pain was undeniable, but so was the truth. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. I was right. I stayed in the shadows, careful not to be seen. Each step they took together felt like a dagger twisting deeper, but I forced myself to keep watching. I needed every detail, every confirmation. They weren't two colleagues sharing a laugh. They were two people lost in each other, blind to the world around them. Their joy was the kind that should have been mine, and that was the cruelest cut of all. Then, as if fate wanted to remove any last shred of doubt, I saw where they were heading. The green awning, the polished windows, the sign I now knew too well, the jewelry store. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just an affair of stolen glances and secret dinners. This was deliberate. Kevin was weaving a future with her piece by piece, and he'd left me standing in the ruins without even knowing it. I froze on the sidewalk, watching the door swing shut behind them. The very store that had called me, the same place that had pulled the curtain back, was about to hand them proof of their love. My hands trembled, But this time, it wasn't fear that moved through me. It was resolve. If this was where the truth lived, then this was exactly where I needed to be. I pressed my back against the cold brick wall, gathering myself before stepping forward. My breath came in sharp bursts, each one burning like fire in my chest. For weeks, I'd been piecing together scraps, shadows, hints. But here, right here, was the full picture. Kevin, the man I built a life with, was standing in the open with her, parading a love that was never meant for me. Through the glass, I could see them laughing as the clerk approached. Kevin's hand rested on Bianca's lower back, a gesture so intimate it made my stomach churn. He looked lighter, unburdened, as if the weight he carried at home never existed when he was with her. Watching it unfold was agony, but it also sharpened something inside me. Pain turned to clarity, and clarity hardened into resolve. I knew then this was my moment. I couldn't let them waltz through this fantasy unchecked, as if my heart were collateral damage. I wasn't going to crumble quietly in the background. No. If Kevin wanted to build a story with her, I would make sure everyone saw the lies written between the lines. And the perfect stage was already set. The jewelry store itself. The bell above the jewelry store door chimed softly as I walked in, but to me it sounded like a drum roll. My palms were damp, my pulse erratic, yet my stride was steady. There they were, standing at the counter like some picture-perfect couple. Kevin leaned close to Bianca, whispering something that made her laugh, a laugh that cut through me like glass. But I wasn't invisible anymore. I had walked into their scene, and it was about to shatter. The clerk's voice carried across the room, bright and warm. "Ah, Mr. Palmer, Ms. Bianca, here for the earrings?" My chest clenched at the casual way their names paired together, like it was the most natural thing in the world. My eyes flicked to the small velvet box on the counter, glowing under the store's lights, a symbol of betrayal dressed up as romance. And still, Kevin hadn't noticed me. I stepped forward, each click of my heels echoing on the marble floor. When I spoke, my voice was calm, but it carried enough weight to freeze the air. Actually, I'd like to see them too, since my husband used our money to buy jewelry for another woman. The words landed like a stone tossed into still water. Conversations around us stopped, heads turned, and just like that, the performance was over. Kevin spun around so fast you'd think I'd slapped him, his face pale, his mouth opening and closing with no words to fill the air. Bianca's smile vanished instantly, her hand slipping from his arm as if burned. The clerk froze behind the counter, his eyes wide, caught in the awkward role of unwilling witness. For a moment, the entire store felt suspended in silence, like everyone was holding their breath. I walked closer, never breaking eye contact with Kevin. His stuttered attempts at excuses fell flat, each syllable drowned out by the sheer weight of the truth hanging between us. I picked up the velvet box, the one meant for Bianca, and snapped it open. Inside, the earrings gleamed, tiny, perfect lies crafted into gold. My fingers trembled, not from weakness, but from the surge of strength rushing through me. "They're lovely," I said, my voice low but sharp enough to cut glass. Then I shifted my gaze to Bianca, who stood frozen, her face drained of color. "Shame they'll never touch your ears." The words rolled off my tongue with a finality that even surprised me. Around us, strangers exchanged glances, whispering, but I stood tall, unflinching, as the facade of their secret affair crumbled in public view. I placed the earrings back on the counter, sliding the box toward the stunned clerk as if sealing the end of their charade. Kevin reached out, his voice finally breaking through, desperate and shaky. "Emily, wait. This isn't what it looks like." The line was almost laughable, the kind of excuse men pull from thin air when the truth is already screaming in everyone's faces. His words carried no weight anymore. I straightened my shoulders, feeling every pair of eyes in the store trained on us. For once, I didn't shrink under the attention. I let Kevin squirm, let Bianca shift uncomfortably under the glares of strangers. This was their stage, their secret theater, and I had just torn down the curtain. The humiliation wasn't mine to carry. It was theirs, and I wanted him to feel every ounce of it. Without another word, I turned and walked toward the door. Each step was deliberate, echoing like a gavel striking down a final verdict. I didn't look back at Kevin or at Bianca. I didn't need to. The silence behind me told me everything. Their story had unraveled, their illusion shattered. And with the door swinging shut behind me, I knew I'd taken the first step into a new chapter, one I would write for myself. In the days that followed, the story spread faster than I could have imagined. Kevin's betrayal wasn't just mine to carry anymore. It was whispered in hallways, passed around offices, dissected at family dinners. The man who once prided himself on control had lost it all in a single afternoon. His polished image cracked, and there was no glue strong enough to hold it together again. Bianca didn't last long after the scandal broke. She vanished quietly, as if the thrill had only been in the secrecy. Without the shadows to hide in, their affair withered in the harsh light of truth. I didn't need revenge against her. Life had already handled that part. She slipped back into anonymity, while Kevin was left standing alone, the world finally seeing him for what he really was. For me, though, it wasn't about gossip or pity. It was about freedom. Each morning, I woke up a little lighter, breathing a little deeper. I filed for divorce with steady hands, knowing I wasn't just ending a marriage. I was reclaiming myself, my dignity, my finances, my future. Piece by piece, I was stitching myself back together, stronger than before, unshaken by the ruins he left behind. Weeks later, I found myself walking through the city again, this time without the weight of suspicion dragging behind me. My steps felt lighter, my heart steadier. I passed by couples holding hands, shop windows gleaming with promises of romance, and instead of aching, I felt a quiet smile tug at my lips. Love hadn't betrayed me, Kevin had, and there was a world waiting for me beyond his lies. One afternoon, as fate would have it, I stopped in front of another jewelry shop. The display sparkled with necklaces, rings, and earrings that might have once made me ache with jealousy or sorrow. But now they only reminded me of how far I'd come. I whispered to myself, almost like a secret mantra, "The most precious jewel I own is my freedom." And in that truth, I felt richer than ever. Kevin's shadow no longer lingered over me. The image of Bianca's laugh, his hand on her back, the velvet box, all of it had lost its power. What remained was me, standing tall, whole again. There was strength in surviving, yes, but even more in refusing to let someone else's betrayal define who I was becoming. That was my victory. I signed the divorce papers without hesitation, sliding the pen across the page like I was closing the final chapter of a book I no longer wanted to read. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like release. I wasn't leaving with broken pieces. I was walking away with everything that truly mattered. My peace. My independence. My voice. That was my real inheritance from this storm. People often asked if I regretted it, if I wished I'd fought harder to save the marriage. But how do you save something that was already rotting from the inside? No, I didn't regret it. I only regretted not trusting my instincts sooner, not believing in my own worth before a phone call forced me to. Sometimes betrayal doesn't break you, it wakes you. And I was wide awake now. As I stepped out into the world, I carried no bitterness, only clarity. Kevin bought earrings for another woman, thinking he could buy her love. But me? I bought myself something priceless, a new life. And as I whispered those final words to myself, I knew the story was no longer his to write. It was mine, and I was just getting started.